Welcome back to The Way. I've always been a pretty clumsy person. I was tall and gangly in high school, and I found that people would often come up to me and say, "Don't you play basketball?" I'd laugh and say, "Well, haven't you ever seen me walk across the room?" I did try to play basketball in middle school, but I found that I couldn't run and dribble the ball at the same time. I was always tripping over my own feet, and I was always getting in other people's way. I had what Matthew might have called a stumbling block problem. That's his favorite expression for things or people that get in the way. So this week we're going to look at how Matthew talked about Jesus as a stumbling block. Whiteboard Wes again here. Have you ever seen one of those cartoons where a cartoon character is trying to catch an animal, and he or she puts up a little box up on a stick and underneath puts something that the animal desires, and then they go and hide and they wait until the animal comes along and grabs what's there, and at the right moment they pull the stick so that the trap or the box falls and catches the animal? Well, that stick, the stick that holds the trap, would have been called in Greek a scandalon. That's the bait stick or the trap stick. That is the key to the trap working correctly. And yes, this word scandalon is the word that we get the English word scandal from. Now, the word scandalon, which is a noun, only occurs 3 times in the Gospel of Matthew, but as a verb, scandalizo, it appears 13 times. And we find that it is a word that Matthew begins to apply to Jesus. We see this clearly in chapter 11, in that first passage in which John the Baptist sends his disciples to Jesus to ask a simple question. Are you really the Messiah, or are we waiting for somebody else? And Jesus gives this reply. He says, well, go and tell John what you hear and what you see. You see the dead raised, you see those who are sick healed, you see the poor having the good news preached to them. But he closes with a very interesting line. He says, and blessed is he who takes no offense at me. The word there, to take offense, is really scandalizo. Now, scandalon can be translated stumbling block or trap or offense. And so the word scandalizo can mean to cause to stumble, to cause to offend, to cause to trap. So there are a couple of places in the Gospel of Matthew where Matthew portrays Jesus as either a stumbling block or potentially a stumbling block. The first is in chapter 13, verse 57, when Jesus goes back to his hometown and preaches in the synagogue. After he preaches, the people begin to grumble and they say, "Isn't this the carpenter's son? And where did he get all of this?" And verse 57 says, "And the people took offense at him." In other words, they were scandalizoed about him or by him. They stumbled on what Jesus said. The second place is in chapter 15, verse 12. Jesus is teaching the crowds, and the disciples come up to him and kind of pull him aside and say, you know, the Pharisees are offended by what you've said. They're scandalizo about what you have said, or they're stumbling over what you said. This helps to explain why Jesus was eventually arrested, why he was harassed, why he was tortured, and eventually why he was killed. You see, Jesus' very teaching was scandalous. Jesus' very being was a scandal. And for sure, that small group of people who followed him in first century Palestine were also offensive and became a scandal. Back in the 1980s, a Catholic priest named Michael Card released a song that became popular on contemporary Christian radio. It was called Scandalon, and it was about the figure of Jesus as a stumbling block. One of the verses went like this. It said, "It seems today the scandalon offends no one at all. The image we present can be stepped over. Could it be that we are like the others long ago? Will we ever learn that all who come must stumble? Is Is it true that all who come must stumble? Is Jesus a loving, gracious, all-inclusive figure? Or is Jesus someone more problematic than that, offensive, someone whom we're more likely to stumble over? It's a question that only you can answer. See you next time on The Way.